You found your way to the quiet shelf, a gentle place where nothing needs to be hurried and nothing needs to be solved. These stories are not meant to surprise you. They are not meant to wake you up or pull you forward. They are here simply to keep you company as your mind begins to slow and your body settles into rest. You can listen closely if you like, or you can let the words drift past you. Like soft background sounds, there is no right way to be here. Each story is short and calm, designed to be easy to follow, and just as easy to let go of. If you fall asleep, the stories will continue quietly on their own. If you stay awake, they will remain gentle and unhurried. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to stay focused. You don't need to reach the end. Simply get comfortable. Allow the room around you to grow quiet. Let your breathing slow naturally. And when you're ready, we'll begin. The lantern in the snow. Mara found the lantern at the back of her grandmother's shed, wrapped in a flour sack and smelling faintly like pine. The glass was cloudy, the brass dulled, but when she touched the handle, it felt oddly warm, like it remembered hands. That evening, snow fell in slow, quiet sheets. The power blinked once, twice, and went out for good. Mara lit the lantern with a match. The flame steadied, then brightened. Too bright for such an old wick. Outside, the neighborhood turned into a soft black and white world. Mara carried the lantern to the porch. Its light spilled down the steps like honey. Across the street, Mr. Alonso opened his door and called, "Mara, is that you?" "I've got light," she said, surprised at how confident she sounded. A few doors down, someone coughed, an anxious, searching sound. Mara stepped off the porch, lantern swinging gently. The light didn't flicker in the wind. It held. One by one, curtains shifted. Doors cracked open. People appeared bundled in coats, faces drawn tight by the sudden outage. Mara's lantern painted their cheeks gold. "Come to my place," she said. "I've got tea, and my grandma's old radio still takes batteries." She didn't know why she said it, only that the lantern made the words feel true. Within minutes, her living room filled with neighbors carrying blankets, board games, and a loaf of bread, still warm from someone's oven. Someone found candles. Someone else brought soup. Mara set the lantern on the coffee table. Its glow made everything look gentler, like the world had softened around its edges. Later, as the wind quieted and the snow kept falling, Mr. Alonso leaned over and whispered, "That lantern, it's doing what it was made to do." "What's that?" Mara whispered back. He smiled. "Helping people find each other." The library that stayed open. The town library closed at 6. Everyone knew that. The lights went off, the doors locked, and the building became a shadow beside the river. Except on the night Lena missed her bus. She stood under the dim streetlight, cheeks stinging from cold, watching the last bus disappear. Her phone was at 2%. Her house was a 40-minute walk. Then she noticed a warm glow behind the library windows. "That's impossible," she muttered. She crossed the street and tugged the library door. It opened with a soft click, no alarm, no resistance, like it had been waiting. Inside, the air smelled of paper and old carpet. The lamps on the reading tables were lit. A kettle whistled somewhere in the back. "Hello?" Lena called. Footsteps approached, slow and unhurried. An older librarian appeared, someone Lena didn't recognize. Her hair was pinned neatly, and she wore a cardigan the color of cinnamon. "You're late," the librarian said kindly. The bus," Lena began. Yes, come in. Warm up." Lena moved toward the nearest table. The librarian set a mug of tea beside her as if it were normal to offer tea after hours. "What is this place?" Lena asked. "The library," the librarian replied, as if Lena had asked the color of the sky. "But it's closed." The librarian's eyes twinkled. "It's closed to errands, not to people who need somewhere safe." Lena wrapped her hands round the mug. The warmth sank into her fingers. On the table lay a book with a bookmark already in it. The title read, "How to Be Brave on Ordinary Days." "I didn't pick that," Lena said. "No," the librarian agreed, "but it picked you." Lena opened the book. The first line felt like a hand on her shoulder. "You're allowed to be scared and still keep going." When her phone finally died, Lena didn't panic. She read by lamplight until the snow stopped. And when the librarian walked her to the door, the street outside looked brighter, like the town itself had remembered how to be kind. The teacup map. Raffi collected teacups from thrift shops, chipped ones, mismatched ones with roses painted too boldly. He lined them up on the windowsill above his kitchen sink. One rainy afternoon, he poured tea into a cup he'd never used before. Pale blue porcelain with tiny gold stars. As the tea settled, the surface rippled strangely. A faint shape appeared, like a coastline. Raffi blinked. The shape sharpened into a miniature map, floating in the tea. He leaned closer. The map was of his own town, streets, river, bridges, drawn in delicate lines. And right there, in the center, was a tiny, glowing dot, pulsing like a heartbeat. Raffi frowned. "That's not normal." He carried the cup carefully out of the kitchen. The dot moved, sliding along the drawn streets. It stopped near the old bakery on Maple Avenue, the one that had been boarded up for years. Curiosity won. Outside, the rain was gentle. Raffi walked quickly, holding the cup steady, watching the dot guide him like a quiet compass. At the bakery, the dot glowed brighter. Raffi tried the door handle, locked, but the side alley had a window slightly cracked. He peered inside. Dust, darkness, and something else. A faint golden shimmer beneath a pile of old cloth. Raffi slipped in through the window, heart thumping. He lifted the cloth and found a small music box, its lid carved with stars like the teacup. When he touched it, the music box began to play. Soft notes like falling rain. The bakery smelled suddenly of cinnamon, as if remembering. The air warmed. Somewhere deep in the walls, a click sounded, like a sleeping place waking up. Raffi carried the music box home. Back at his sink, he looked at the teacup again. The map had changed. Now the glowing dot rested in his own kitchen, and beside it, new lines appeared. Paths he'd never seen, leading outward. Raffi smiled slowly. Maybe his town had secrets. Maybe his teacups weren't just decorations. Maybe they were invitations. The clockmaker's quiet hour. Every day at 4:17 p.m., the clocks in Mr. Vellen's shop stopped ticking. Not for long, only 60 seconds. But it happened every day, no matter how many clocks he repaired. Customers thought it was charming. Some called it the shop's little quirk. Mr. Vellen didn't laugh. He had noticed something else. During that minute, the world outside the window seemed to pause too. Cars in the street did not move. A falling leaf hung in the air. Even the sunlight looked held in place, like breath. On the first day he dared, Mr. Velen stepped outside during the quiet minute. The street was frozen. Sound disappeared. A dog mid-step stood like a statue, and at the corner, a woman in a gray coat was still moving. She looked straight at him as if she'd been expecting him. "You can see it too," she said, her voice the only sound. Mr. Velen swallowed. "What is this?" "The quiet hour," she replied. "It's a minute the world forgets to rush." "Why me?" he asked. She nodded toward his shop. "Because you fix time for a living, and because time has a message for you." She handed him a small envelope. It felt heavy, like it carried more than paper. "What's inside?" he whispered. "A reminder," she said. "You've been measuring life instead of living it." Before he could respond, a ticking sound returned. First one clock, then a chorus. The street snapped back into motion. Cars rolled, leaves fell, a distant horn blared. Mr. Velen stood on the sidewalk, envelope in hand, chin down, trembling as if he'd woken from a dream. Inside his shop, he opened the envelope. It held a single note written in neat ink. At 4:17. "Tomorrow, close the shop. Go to the river, bring bread. Sit down, watch the light." Mr. Velen stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at the rows of clock, all ticking obediently, and realized something he hadn't admitted in years. The clocks were fine. It was him who needed repair. The Blanket Fort Post Office. Nico built blanket forts the way some people built castles, with care, with ambition, and with a serious respect for comfort. On Saturday mornings, he turned the living room into a soft tunnel city. Chairs as pillars, quilts as roofs, fairy lights as stars. One rainy Saturday, he found something odd tucked between the couch cushions. A small cardboard box stamped with red ink. "Fort Post, outgoing," he laughed. "Okay, who did this?" No one answered. The house was quiet. His parents were out grocery shopping. Inside the box were envelopes, tiny ones, each addressed in neat handwriting. Not to places, but to feelings. To someone who misses their old friend. To the person who thinks they're not enough. To whoever needs a small miracle today. Nico's stomach fluttered. It felt like finding someone else's diary, except the envelopes looked like they wanted to be found. At the bottom was a blank envelope and a pencil. Nico sat cross-legged under the fort's sky of quilt and lights. He stared at the blank envelope, then wrote, "To Dad, from the version of me who doesn't know how to say this out loud." He hesitated, then slipped a note inside. "I like when you laugh at my jokes. I notice when you try. I'm glad you're my dad." He sealed it with a strip of tape and placed it in the Fort Post box. A soft thump sounded behind him. Nico spun around. A second box had appeared. "Fort Post incoming." With shaking hands, Nico opened it. Inside was one envelope addressed to him. "To Nico, from someone who sees you." He opened it carefully. The note inside read, "Your fort is a lighthouse. You make safe places. Don't forget you deserve them too." Nico stared at the words until his eyes stung, not with sadness, but with something warm and surprising. When his parents came home, Nico didn't explain the boxes. He just built the fort a little bigger, because apparently the world had mail for him. The river that remembered names. At the edge of town, the river curved like a question mark. People fished there, skipped stones, whispered secrets into the wind. Tess went there for one reason. The river knew things. Her grandmother had told her once, if you speak your name into the river, it will say it back, but only if you're listening with your whole heart. Tess didn't believe in magic, not really, but she believed in her grandmother. So on a gray afternoon, Tess stood on the bank and said softly, Tess. The river babbled over rocks. Wind combed through reeds. Nothing. She tried again. Tess Albright. Still nothing, just water and ordinary sound. Tess sighed and turned to leave, but then she heard it, so faint she thought it was her own imagination. Tess. She froze. The river's voice was not loud. It was like a memory in water. Gentle, patient. Tess, it said again, clearer. Tess stepped closer to the bank. How? The river swirled around a stone. You haven't been here in a while. I come all the time. Not like this, the river replied. Not with your thoughts quiet? Tess swallowed. Can you say other names? The river's current slowed as if considering. Yes. Tess's heart pounded. Can you say my mom's name? The river softened its sound. Ava. The name drifted through the reeds like a song. Tess felt her throat tighten. My mom died when I was little, Tess whispered. I don't remember her voice. The river's surface shimmered. I remember the way she spoke her own name here. She was afraid you'd forget her. Tess wiped her cheek, surprised to find tears. I didn't forget. No, the river agreed. But you've been carrying a heavy kind of remembering. Tess knelt, fingers touching cold water. What do I do with that? The river replied, let it move, like me. Tess stayed until dusk, listening, not for answers, exactly. More like permission. When she finally stood to go, the river whispered once more, Tess. This time it sounded like a blessing. The candle that wouldn't go out. In the little stone chapel, candles were ordinary. They flickered, they melted, they ended. But the candle in the back row didn't. Elena noticed it first during a quiet afternoon visit. She had come to sit in the pews and breathe for a while. No talking, no solving problems, no explaining herself. The chapel was empty except for a single candle burning near the back, its flame steady as if protected from every draft. Elena sat, watching it. Minutes passed. The flame did not waver. A custodian walked by carrying keys. Elena pointed. That candle's been burning a long time, hasn't it? The custodian glanced over. Oh, that one. People leave it when they're praying for someone. We try to replace it, but it refuses. Refuses? He shrugged. We snuff it out sometimes. It lights itself again. Nobody knows why. Elena stared. Something in her chest loosened, like a knot remembering how to untie. She stood and walked to the candle. A small card beside it read, For anyone who feels alone, even in a room full of people. Elena swallowed hard. It felt uncomfortably accurate. She sat back down, hands folded, and whispered, "If you're real, help me feel steady." The candle flame brightened, not dramatically, not like a movie, just enough to make the shadows gentler. Elena breathed in, then out. She pictured the worries that chased her at night. Bills, family, old regrets, the feeling of always being behind. She didn't ask for them to vanish. She only asked for the strength to carry them without breaking. The candle's flame didn't move. It didn't dance with panic. It simply stayed. Elena found herself matching it, one breath at a time, steadying, anchoring. When she left the chapel, the air outside was cold, but her shoulders felt lighter. She looked back once through the open door. The candle still burned, not as a miracle to impress anyone, as a quiet reminder some lights are meant to last long enough for you to find your way back to yourself. The baker who sold sunlight. On Elm Street, there was a bakery with no sign. People still found it. They found it on days when the clouds sat too heavy on their thoughts, when the world felt gray, no matter how bright the lamps were. Inside the shelves held ordinary things, rolls, buns, little cakes glazed like morning frost, but the air smelled like warm vanilla and something else, like summer. "Welcome," said the baker, a woman with flour on her sleeves and laughter lines by her eyes. "What do you need today?" "I need a croissant," a customer might say. The baker would tilt her head. "Sure, but what do you really need?" Some people rolled their eyes, some people laughed. Some people, quiet people, answered honestly. "I need to stop feeling so tired," whispered a student once. The baker nodded, reached under the counter, and slid out a small paper bag. "Sunbun," she said. "Eat it slow." The student took one bite and felt something they hadn't felt in weeks. A gentle warmth behind the ribs, like hope lighting a tiny candle. Word spread. People started coming for the secret menu. A grieving man asked, "Do you have anything that helps you remember the good parts?" The baker handed him a slice of lemon cake. "This one tastes like somebody's laugh," she said. A kid who'd been bullied asked, barely audible, "Do you have something that makes you feel brave?" The baker gave them a cookie shaped like a shield. "Crunch it loud," she advised. One rainy morning, a woman walked in and said, "I don't need anything. I just want to stop feeling alone." The baker didn't reach for the oven. She poured 2 cups of tea, pulled out a chair, and said, "Then sit. Eat nothing. Stay anyway." The woman's eyes filled, and that was the bakery's real magic. Not the pastries, not the sunlight flavor, not the secret recipes. It was the way you left with your hands warmer, because someone had looked at you and asked what you truly needed. The crochet mystery in drawer 7. Ada labeled everything: pantry jars, photo albums. Even her crochet hooks were arranged by size in a cloth roll. So when she opened drawer 7 and found a crochet hook she'd never owned, she stopped breathing for a second. It was silver with a small moon etched into the handle. It lay on top of a ball of yarn the color of storm clouds. Yarn she didn't recognize either. Ada looked around her craft room as if the walls might confess. She lived alone. The door was locked. The windows were shut. Still, the hook and yarn waited like an assignment. Ada told herself the reasonable things. She'd forgotten buying them. A friend had gifted them. It was a mix-up, but the moon on the handle made her fingers itch with curiosity. She sat at her table, threaded the yarn, and began to crochet without a pattern. Just a simple chain, then stitches, then more stitches. The yarn moved smoothly, almost like it wanted to be worked. As the fabric grew, it started to shape itself. No counting, no measuring, just forming. Ada blinked. The piece looked like a small pouch. Then, as if finishing a sentence, the last stitch tightened itself neatly. Ada stared. "Okay," she whispered. "That's new." Inside the pouch was something hard. She reached in and pulled out a tiny key. Her heart jumped. The key was old brass, the kind that belonged to a diary or a jewelry box. A tag dangled from it with one word written in tidy handwriting: courage. Ada held the key in her palm. It wasn't heavy, but it felt important. Her eyes drifted to the small locked box on her bookshelf, the one she'd avoided opening since her mother's funeral. Inside were letters Ada hadn't read because she was afraid they'd hurt too much. Ada stood, walked to the shelf, and inserted the key. It turned easily. The lid opened with a soft click, like a door finally agreeing to be a door. Ada sat down and breathed. Then she began to read, slowly, bravely, while the moon hook rested quietly on the table, as if its job was done. The train that only ran at dawn. No one talked about the dawn train because it didn't appear on schedules. It didn't have a platform sign. It wasn't even always there. But if you stood at the old station at exactly 5:04 a.m., when the sky was still half asleep, you might hear it. A low hum, a soft clatter, the kind of sound that makes you look up even if you didn't mean to. Jules came to the station because he couldn't sleep. He'd been stuck in the same thoughts for months. What he should have said, what he should have done, how time kept moving while he felt frozen. The station was empty. The benches were cold. Then the tracks began to glow faintly like they remembered fire. A train rolled in, quiet as fog. Its windows were lit warmly, and the doors opened with a sigh. A conductor stepped out. "Morning," she said, like this was normal. "You getting on?" Jules frowned. "Where does it go?" The conductor smiled. "Where you need to see something." "That's not a destination." "It is for the dawn train," she replied. Jules hesitated, then stepped inside. The seats were soft. The air smelled like clean paper and coffee. A few passengers sat quietly, looking out the windows with thoughtful faces. The train moved. Outside, Jules didn't see the town. He saw moments, like scenes playing in the morning mist, a younger version of himself laughing with a friend, his dad teaching him to tie a knot, a day at the lake when everything felt possible. Jules' throat tightened. "Why are you showing me this?" The conductor stood beside him. "Because you've been staring at your mistakes so long, you forgot your whole life includes joy." Jules blinked hard. "I don't deserve." "Stop," she said gently. "This isn't about deserving. It's about remembering." The train slowed. The windows showed the station again, back where he started. The doors opened. Jules stepped off. The sky was turning pink. The conductor tipped her hat. "Same time tomorrow," she said, "if you need another ride." Jules watched the train fade into dawn. Then he walked home, not cured, not perfect, just slightly lighter, as if he'd been handed a small, steady piece of himself. The music in the vent. Kira heard it at night when the house was quiet, a soft melody drifting from the heating vent in her bedroom. At first she thought it was a neighbor's TV. Then she realized the tune always started the moment she turned off her lamp, like the darkness was a switch. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of music that felt like warm socks and clean sheets. Kira pressed her ear to the vent. The melody rose and fell like breathing. The next night she whispered, "Hello?" The music paused, as if listening. Then it changed just slightly into a new tune, gentler, as if answering. Kira sat up. "Are you in there?" A faint tapping came from the metal. One tap, then two, like a code. Kira frowned, then remembered something her grandpa used to do with spoons on the table. One for yes, two for no. "Is someone stuck?" she asked. One tap. Kira's stomach dropped. She climbed off the bed and grabbed a flashlight. The vent screws were rusty, but she managed to loosen them with a coin. Inside was darkness and dust. Then, deep in the vent shaft, something gleamed. A tiny brass object. Kira stretched her arm as far as she could and hooked it with her fingertips. She pulled out a small music charm, like a miniature wind-up box attached to a chain. It looked old. The metal was worn smooth like it had been held often. When she clicked it open, it played the exact melody she'd been hearing. Kira stared. "So you were lost?" One tap came from the vent again. Kira's eyes widened. "Wait, the vent is tapping. That's not the charm." She leaned closer. "Are you the house?" One tap. Kira laughed nervously. "Okay, that's weird." The vent tapped again, slower, as if thoughtful. Kira held up the charm. "Did you want me to find this?" One tap. She turned the charm over and found a tiny engraving. "For when the night feels too big." Kira swallowed. She clipped it to her bedside lamp. That night, when the dark arrived, the music didn't come from the vent. It came from right beside her, soft and steady, like the house had placed a small guard on her nightstand. The door behind the grocery shelf. The grocery store was normal until you looked too long at shelf 12. Shelf 12 held cereal boxes, oatmeal tubs, and a line of canned peaches nobody ever bought. The fluorescent lights buzzed above it like lazy bees. Milo worked evenings stocking shelves. He knew the store's corners, its squeaky tiles, the way the freezer doors fogged up when you opened them. On his third week, he noticed something. The canned peaches never moved. Not once. Customers walked past. Kids tugged their parents, but no one reached for the peaches. Milo decided to take a can down, just to see. As soon as he lifted it, the shelf behind it shimmered slightly, like heat above pavement. Milo blinked. He moved the can aside. Behind it was not a wall. It was a door, a narrow wooden door, painted the exact same beige as the store wall, with a small round knob and a paper sign taped to it. "Backstock. Please knock." Milo stared. The manager had never mentioned a door on shelf 12. He knocked. For a second, nothing happened. Then the door opened inward, revealing warm golden light and the smell of fresh bread. Impossible inside a grocery aisle. A woman stood in the doorway, wearing an apron dusted with flour. She looked calm, like she'd been expecting him. "You found it?" she said. "Found what?" Milo asked, voice squeaking. "The back stock," she replied, as if that explained everything. Milo peered inside. Instead of boxes and pallets, he saw shelves lined with things you couldn't buy anywhere. Jars labeled second chances, packets of good timing, and baskets of rolls tagged for hard days. Milo's mouth fell open. "Is this allowed?" The woman smiled. "Allowed?" "Yes." "Advertised?" "No." Milo swallowed. "Why is it here?" "Because people come in hungry," she said gently. "And not all hunger is for food." She held out a small paper bag. "Take this." Milo opened it. Inside was a warm roll that smelled like sunshine. "What does it do?" he asked. The woman shrugged. "It helps you feel like tomorrow is possible." Milo stood there holding the roll, feeling something shift inside him, like a tight string loosening. Behind him, the store buzzed and beeped and carried on. But Milo now knew a secret. Sometimes the world keeps hidden doors for the people who need them most. The little radio station at midnight. At exactly 12:03 a.m., Noor's old radio clicked on by itself. She sat up in bed, heart racing. The radio was supposed to be broken, stuck between stations, all static and hum. But now a voice spoke through it, warm and clear. "Good midnight, listeners. This is Station Softlight, bringing you the calm you didn't know you deserved." Noor stared at the radio like it might grow teeth. The voice continued. "Tonight's first song is for the person who's been holding their breath all day." A gentle instrumental began. Slow piano, soft background crackle like a fireplace. Noor's shoulders dropped before she could stop them. She leaned closer. The voice returned between songs, speaking like a friend who didn't demand anything. "If your thoughts are loud," the host said, "let them be loud. You don't have to fight them. Just don't let them drive." Noor swallowed. The radio had never sounded like this. It felt personal. She whispered, "Who are you?" The music dipped lower, and the host replied as if he'd heard her. "Someone who used to be awake at midnight, too." Noor's eyes widened. "You can hear me?" A soft chuckle. "Not exactly, but this station finds the people it needs." Noor lay back, listening. The host introduced the next segment. Tiny courage stories, short, gentle stories about ordinary people doing hard things. One story was about a kid who asked for help. Another was about a woman who took a walk even though her anxiety begged her not to. Noor felt her breathing slow. At 12:59, the host said, "Last message before we fade. You are not behind. You are human." The radio clicked off. Noor sat in the sudden quiet, shocked by how peaceful she felt. The next night, she waited. At 12:03, the radio clicked on again. "Welcome back," the host said softly. "I kept a seat warm for you." Noor smiled into the dark. Midnight didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt like a place where a small, invisible station was reminding her, "You can make it through this night, too." You've reached the end of the quiet shelf. The stories can rest now, and so can you. There's nothing left to listen for and nothing left to hold on to. Everything that needed to be said has already settled gently into the quiet. If you're still awake, you can remain here for a moment longer, letting the calm linger. And if sleep has already arrived, you can drift easily, knowing the night is steady and kind. These stories will always be here, whenever you need a gentle place to land, a quiet shelf you can return to again and again. For now, let everything soften, let the silence hold you. Good night, and rest well.